I knew I was invisible the day an intern asked where the server room was. The same server room I had designed, wired, and debugged through 3 winters of caffeine shakes and budget ramen. 5 years in, and I was still being asked if I was with the temp agency. My name's Elise Grant, Senior Systems Architect at Nexora Technologies, though you wouldn't know it if you read any of their press releases. If resentment were a data stream, I could have powered the whole grid. What began as a fragile prototype called EchoCore V2 Final Reel this time on my old Lenovo became the backbone of our compliance platform, the one investors drooled over and executives built their resumes on. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. The CTO couldn't debug a toaster, yet he strutted around quoting our revolutionary adaptive compliance engine like he'd built it with divine intervention. I didn't start bitter. I was the kind of idiot who brought brownies to sprint reviews, stayed late helping junior devs untangle logic loops, took every 6 a.m. call with our offshore team like civic duty. Back then, the CEO, Gavin Rhodes, used to tell me, "You're our secret weapon, Elise." He promised partner track after Series B, promised a seat at the table once we scaled, promised like men in Navy suits always promise, smooth, smiling, empty. By year 3, I had built out the neural architecture that made Nexora the darling of every legal tech newsletter. Our first multi-million compliance client signed because of my system. Yet when the press release hit, my name was nowhere. Just Gavin, the CTO, and some quote about synergistic breakthroughs. I emailed once, just once, to ask about the omission. He replied, "Marketing made the call. Hope you understand." Oh, I understood. That night, I created a folder called Just in Case. Into it went every Git log, annotated spec, Slack message where they thanked me for saving their back end. I knew how people like Gavin operated. I kept every IP form, every draft submission, every receipt. The kicker? Nexora's flagship patent listed 4 inventors. 3 hadn't written a line of code since dial-up. The 4th was me, added only after I reminded legal I'd filed the provisional myself, begging for a receipt after buying the company dinner. After that, I smiled when they left me off decks. I nodded when they skipped my name on client calls. I became what every tech CEO fears most, a quiet woman who remembers everything. Have you ever heard your boss laugh about you behind your back? I have, but that comes later. By year 5, I didn't expect a seat at the table. I was the table. They just didn't know it yet. I found out we'd won the National Innovation Award from a forwarded Slack emoji. "Gavin crushed it," someone wrote. Crushed what? His 4th gin and tonic? The award was national, televised, investor bait big. It cited unprecedented AI-driven audit flow and disruption of legacy frameworks. Funny, those were my phrases, word for word, from my original white paper, down to the Oxford comma. The CEO gave interviews calling it a testament to visionary leadership. My name? Not a whisper. I was in the server room eating vending machine pretzels when I read it. I didn't cry. I highlighted the article, added it to just in case, and went back to debugging the parser our CTO insisted didn't need upgrading. That Friday, the company threw a rooftop party. Warm beer, bad music, and Gavin flipping burgers like he invented fire. I showed up late, sunglasses on, invisible as ever. That's when I heard him laugh. A board member asked about the award submission. Gavin grinned. "She really thinks her code won us that award." He said it loud, like he wanted the wind to carry it. My ears went hot, my pulse cold. The board guy chuckled. "She's got spirit." Gavin smirked. This was always about vision, not code. I didn't throw a drink. I didn't yell. I walked past the HR manager who once called me sweet but intense, past the product lead who'd stolen my diagrams for his Dallas presentation, down 3 flights into the office. I unlocked the main lobby screen. Team Nexora headshots cycling proudly. Mine was 3rd from the end. I deleted it. No prompt. No, "Are you sure?" just gone. That night, I added 2 files to just in case: the award PDF with my metadata and a transcript from their internal award prep Zoom. And that's when something inside me changed. I stopped asking for credit. I started preparing for leverage. After that rooftop humiliation, I went quiet. No more late-night brainstorms. No more quick ideas on whiteboards while marketing played ping pong in the background. I stopped volunteering brilliance. I became background noise, steady, reliable, ignorable. Still in the room, but fading into the wallpaper. They thought I'd burned out. In reality, I was consolidating power. Gavin stopped CCing me on investor decks. Fine. I downloaded every single one from the shared drive anyway. Tucked them neatly into subfolders labeled Narrative Drift V1 through V19. I tracked every revision where Elise's adaptive core morphed into Gavin's governance framework. I even let some internal audit risks slide. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to remind any future reader how deeply dependent the system was on someone who actually understood it. Each week, I exported my dev logs, encrypted and stored on 2 separate drives, one in the cloud under my college roommate's name, the other in a physical safe behind my couch labeled tax records. No one ever looked twice. Meanwhile, I became the ghost in Nexora's machine, unseen, but omnipresent. When they restructured departments for efficiency, I was moved from principal engineer to technical advisor, innovation support. Translation: the basement of irrelevance. I smiled, nodded, and accepted my windowless cubicle like beachfront property. While they paraded Smart Compliance 2.0 and AI-driven ethics at conferences, I was building my own quiet arsenal, mapping dependencies, logging authorship, printing every email between legal and the awards committee. I even had the original invoice from the certification vendor, signed by me, time-stamped, and labeled Primary Architect. Gavin was too busy basking in interviews, the CTO too busy stealing Medium articles. I was too busy making sure every bite of truth was preserved. One afternoon, while labeling backups like a forensic librarian, a soft knock came at my cubicle. Derek, one of the good ones from engineering, hovered nervously. "Hey," he said, glancing around. "Sahana in finance mentioned restructuring. You didn't hear it from me." I kept my tone even. "Layoffs?" He nodded. "Investor push. Leaner model. Don't think you're on the list, though." "I'm not worried," I said, smiling. He hesitated. "You okay, Elise?" "Better than you think." I leaned in. "Just, if you hear when legal schedules their review for the award documents, let me know." He frowned. "For the investor deal?" "Exactly." He nodded, not asking why. "Smart man." When he left, I stared at my monitor, pulse steady, like a chess player watching the board align. I was halfway out this door already, carrying every blueprint, log, and clause they'd ever ignored. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about precision, about making sure they realized, too late, just how much of their empire was built on a woman they thought replaceable. They called it the big one, a $400 million investment round that would take Nexora global. Enough to buy Gavin his 3rd modest cabin in Aspen he loved bragging about. The office buzzed with manic energy. Espresso machine finally repaired. Everyone suddenly an idea architect. Me? I was a ghost, demoted in title but omnipresent in code. Found out about the strategy meetings from a shared calendar invite I wasn't on. When I asked casually if I should join, Gavin smiled that PR smile. "We need you focused on stability tasks, Elise. This is more high-level strategy stuff. Don't worry, we'll credit your groundwork." Groundwork, like I'd laid mulch, not built the framework that got them here. "Of course," I said, happy to help from the sidelines. They thought I'd vanished, but Derek kept feeding me notes, meeting minutes, slide decks, whiteboard snapshots. 1 p.m. even uploaded a full demo script to the knowledge base without access controls. I read every line. They were selling my architecture as if it had fallen from heaven. Nexora compliance, the tagline said. So seamless, it feels sentient. Gavin was everywhere. Front of the deck, front of the story, front of the staged group photo. I wasn't in the shot, but I was in every line of code that made that photo possible. The core system, now rebranded as NextMind AI, was my baby. 3 years of sleepless debugging, custom rule interpreters, and legal compromises over data triggers. They paraded it like an immaculate conception, but every glossy slide missed one thing. The consent mechanism buried deep in the architecture, tied to IP origin validation. I was the only one who knew it existed. I built it back when we submitted for that national award. To keep legal honest. I never imagined I'd use it, but watching them monetize my silence, I realized that clause wasn't a safeguard anymore. It was a tripwire, and I was ready to pull it. I printed the latest investor deck and read it in the quiet hum of the server room. My unofficial sanctuary. The slide that finally broke me wasn't even malicious. It was the timeline. Every milestone marked with Gavin's initials. Every single one. Even the pilot audit that crashed 3 times until I rewrote the cache logic in an Arby's parking lot during a snowstorm. But instead of fury, I felt clarity. They could rewrite the story however they wanted. The foundation was still mine. My code, my design, my fingerprints on every function. And somewhere deep in their legally binding paperwork was the clause that made that truth unavoidable. I took a personal day, told HR I needed time for mental wellness, which, translated, meant I was going to light a match under their $400 million fantasy. The drive downtown was silent. Just me, the hum of the heater, and a calm too precise to be called peace. The National Innovation Committee kept its records in a bland concrete building that looked like an old library. The receptionist didn't even look up when I asked for the Nexora award file. I slid my ID and the access code I had personally registered months earlier across the counter. She typed, frowned slightly, then disappeared for 10 minutes before returning with a binder so thick it could have doubled as a weapon. No PDF, no cloud link, just paper, heavy with toner and karma. I carried it to a corner table and opened it like it was something sacred or explosive. Every document was there, architecture diagrams, test logs, flowcharts I'd written in the dead of night between crashes. And on page 7, the line that changed everything. Primary architect, Elise Grant. Not team member, not lead contributor, primary architect. I remembered the argument I'd had with legal to include that title. They said it didn't fit the template. I said I'd walk if it wasn't there. They gave in. That single line was now my detonator. I flipped to the back, licensing and eligibility disclosures. Paragraph 4.3c. Dry as dust. Any future commercial investment, acquisition, or integration that explicitly references this award or relies on the intellectual property submitted herein shall require written consent from the named primary architect prior to execution. Translation. They needed my signature to use my work in their deal. Not the CTO's, not Gavin's. Mine. I smiled. Small, surgical. I copied the entire file twice, paid for certified mail to 2 addresses. One my apartment, one a P.O. box I hadn't opened in years. Insurance. On the way home, I stopped at a diner off Route 7, ordered pancakes, and poured syrup with the steady hand of someone about to alter the trajectory of an empire. Back in my apartment, I placed the binder on my kitchen table like a live wire. All those years begging for credit, for validation. Now I had something far more valuable: control. They could pitch investors, polish decks, rehearse lies. Without my consent, they were selling vapor. I didn't need to shout. I had something better. Paperwork. Boring, binding, bulletproof paperwork. The night before the signing felt like a wake I hadn't been invited to. Nexora had rented the top floor of a rooftop steakhouse for select stakeholders. Translation: everyone who loved hearing themselves talk. I wasn't invited. Derek was. He accidentally FaceTimed me while grabbing a breadstick. "Oops," he said, smirking. "Oops," I echoed, and hit record. Gavin was in his element. Drink in hand, shirt unbuttoned just enough to look visionary. He was bragging about our system, our achievement, our future. The investors clinked glasses. 5 years. Blood, sweat, strategy, he said, pausing dramatically on that last word like he'd ever sweated over a compiler error. "We built this from nothing." The room laughed. My jaw tightened. I ended the recording, closed my laptop, and sat in the dim light of my apartment. No anger, no sadness, just focus. The kind that cuts clean. I logged into the award portal using my credentials, still active, and downloaded the PDF one last time. Then I drafted an email. Subject: Compliance Verification. Award-linked IP authorization. Recipient: legal@greenmontcapital.com, the Investors Council. CC: myself. I wrote carefully, every syllable a precision strike. In advance of tomorrow's signing for the Series D agreement, please ensure all required signatures tied to prior award submission terms are present and up to date, specifically those concerning the designated primary architect as listed in the NTIC award documentation for Nexora Systems, submission ID 143B. Please refer to paragraph 4.3c of the licensing eligibility terms. I signed it simply. Best regards, Elise Grant, Primary Architect, Nexora Core Framework. No bold, no drama, just a single quiet bullet leaving the chamber. Then I clicked send. No one at Nexora noticed that email go out. Not marketing, not the CTO, not even Gavin. 32 minutes later, my read receipt pinged. 12 minutes after that, I got a reply from GD Legal Counsel, the investors' law firm. "Thank you for the clarification. We are reviewing the documentation tonight. No emojis, no exclamation marks, just quiet, professional urgency." That was enough. They were reading the binder. They were realizing their $400 million rocket ship had no launch key without me. I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, fed the cat. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be asking for a seat at the table. Tomorrow, I was the table. The boardroom at Nexora's downtown office looked like money had been poured into a blender and served chilled. Glass walls, skyline views, and bottled water so symmetrical it could pass a military inspection. Everyone wore navy or gray except Gavin, who strutted in wearing a cream blazer like he was auditioning for a Silicon Valley biopic no one wanted to see. He was electric, grinning, shaking hands, radiating false charm. The CFO hovered like a nervous waiter. The CTO smirked in forced solidarity. And one junior associate spun a fidget spinner that buzzed like foreshadowing. I sat at the far end. Not a guest, not a leader. Technically invited, legally necessary. My chair didn't even match the others. Gavin hadn't looked at me in weeks. The investors arrived right on time. 3 partners, 1 general counsel, and a junior lawyer with eyebrows permanently set to suspicious. Cards were exchanged. Small talk about market dynamics floated like lint in the air. Then came the binder. The lead lawyer, mid-50s, calm, expensive, opened it with reverence. "We're aligned on most deal points," he said, flipping to the final tab. "Just one item before signatures." He looked up. "This pertains to the intellectual property disclosure surrounding Nexora's core framework." Gavin's smile tightened. "Of course," he said easily. "All in-house, entirely proprietary." The lawyer didn't smile back. "This award submission from the National Innovation Committee is referenced several times in your valuation narrative. Is that correct?" Gavin nodded. That win put us on the map. Indeed, the lawyer said, flipping another page. We reviewed the licensing clauses. The documentation requires a final signature from the designated primary architect to authorize any tied investment or commercial use of the IP. Silence rippled like static. Gavin blinked. I'm sorry. The what? The primary architect? The lawyer repeated, patient but sharp. It's in paragraph 4.3c, non-transferable consent. He turned the binder around. We just need that sign-off before proceeding. Gavin chuckled weakly. Right. Probably our CTO or product lead. The lawyer tilted his head slightly. No, it's listed by name. He flipped the binder again, revealing a highlighted page. Primary architect, Elise Grant. The color drained from Gavin's face. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again slower, like a computer freezing mid-update. Wait, what? I didn't stand. I didn't clear my throat. I simply slid my own binder across the table, aligning it perfectly with his. The lawyer picked it up, compared pages, nodded once, then he looked straight at me. We can't proceed without her signature. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. The lawyer placed his pen down softly, precisely. We can't move forward until Miss Grant signs, he repeated, this time addressing everyone. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. It hit harder than a gavel. The CFO's face went pale. The CTO stared at his coffee like it might provide answers. One of the investors leaned back, assessing the wreckage unfolding. Gavin gestured vaguely toward me, voice cracking. But Elise isn't even on the signature schedule. She's not. Your submission says otherwise. The lawyer interrupted smoothly. Your award says otherwise. Your pitch deck says otherwise. He flipped again, landing on slide 12. Award-winning AI architecture, the engine of our innovation. That architecture is legally tied to her name. Without her authorization, this award is ineligible. The award becomes void. The valuation collapses, which means so does the deal. The lawyer let the words breathe. No drama, just gravity. All eyes turned toward me. I met them with calm, so absolute it felt like silence had taken human form. I folded my hands on the table. We can talk terms, I said evenly, but not with him. My eyes didn't leave the investor's lawyer. If this deal goes through, it needs clean hands, clean leadership. You could feel the axis shift. Even the fidget spinner stopped. The lead lawyer nodded slowly. We may need to reconvene separately to clarify authorizations, possibly personnel. Translation: get Gavin out or this deal dies. Across the table, Gavin looked around for rescue. The CFO avoided eye contact, the CTO had suddenly found his tie fascinating, and the associate was texting someone furiously. But everyone knew the truth now. The company no longer revolved around him. It revolved around me. Gavin tried to recover, but you could see the panic tighten around his throat. He leaned forward, words tumbling out like marbles. Maybe there's a workaround, he stammered. A supplemental authorization, or what do you call it? A post-signature declaration? Something temporary? His voice cracked on the word temporary, like he already knew what was coming. The investor's lawyer didn't even look up. That, he said evenly, would void the award eligibility, materially alter your valuation, and therefore derail the agreement. His tone was polite but absolute, the sound of a guillotine dropping. No drama, just clean severance. Gavin fell back into his chair. For the first time since I'd met him, he had nothing to say. The CFO's knuckles went white around his pen. The CTO's forehead glistened like he'd just realized half his LinkedIn posts were about to age poorly. The lead investor, Rachel Pierce, adjusted her blazer and spoke for the first time. Her voice was measured, surgical. "Well then," she said, glancing between the lawyers, "we'll need to revise the board structure immediately. This deal doesn't move forward with internal instability." Translation: Gavin was done. His CEO title had just expired mid-meeting. She turned her gaze to me. "Ms. Grant, would you be joining us on the oversight board?" I let the silence stretch just long enough for Gavin to feel it echo in his chest. "Yes," I said softly, "but my conditions are non-negotiable." Rachel nodded once, without hesitation. "Understood." One of the associates slid a blank page from the binder, a fresh addendum. "Revised oversight structure. Effective immediately." Rachel's pen moved across the page like a surgeon's scalpel. She didn't even look at Gavin as she said, "CEO resignation accepted." Then, neatly, cleanly, she crossed out his name. The pen slid across the polished table toward me. Every eye followed its slow glide. I read every line, always do. Then I signed my name with deliberate precision, each stroke steady, final, like I was putting the last period at the end of a sentence he'd never learned to read. The air in the room shifted. Not loud, not triumphant, just different. Like a storm had passed, and everything smelled sharper because of it. The lawyers began collecting documents. The CFO exhaled for the first time in 20 minutes, and one of the investors offered me a quiet, almost reverent smile. Gavin sat motionless, staring at the tabletop like he could will time backward. His face had gone slack, his voice gone entirely. The man who once called himself the visionary of Nexora now looked like a ghost trapped inside his own boardroom. I rose slowly, tucking the binder under my arm. My chair scraped softly against the floor, just enough to make him look up. He tried to speak, but only air came out. I met his eyes. No venom, no gloating, just truth. "5 years in the dark," I said, calm as breath. "No, Gavin, I just wanted you to think I was." Then I turned and walked out. No applause, no door slam, no cinematic music cue, just the quiet, rhythmic sound of my heels on the marble floor, each one echoing my name. The moment the elevator doors closed, I exhaled. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel borrowed. Down in the lobby, the security guard gave me a polite nod. I smiled back, stepped out into the city sunlight, and it felt like a system reboot. The crash logs finally cleared. That afternoon, my inbox flooded. One from legal, subject line, transition plan. Another from Rachel. Subject, welcome to the board. And one, buried among the noise, from Derek. He's gone. They're calling it mutual separation. Drinks later? I typed back. Maybe tomorrow. Tonight, I just want quiet. I sat on my couch with a cup of tea, the binder resting on the table in front of me. Outside, the city lights blinked like old servers booting up. I thought about every 3 a.m. crash, every ignored email, every sweet but intense comment. And then I thought about the moment the lawyer said, "We can't proceed without her." That single sentence had carried more power than every motivational speech Gavin ever gave. Some people build empires, others build the foundation those empires stand on, and sometimes, quietly, they pull the foundation out. That night, I renamed my just-in-case folder. It had served its purpose. Now it was called Clause 43C, Lot 1. I zipped it, backed it up twice, and smiled. For the first time, my code wasn't just running the company. It had rewritten the hierarchy itself. And as I finally closed my laptop, I whispered the same line Gavin used to say to me years ago. Only this time, it was true. "You're my secret weapon." Except now, the secret was out.